Let's get to it. Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of Ben's MicroVision podcast, a podcast for general information and entertainment purposes only, not a financial advice podcast. It's great to be with you today. We've got a lot to go through. We've got the IAA trade show in Munich. We've got the unveiling of the MicroVision Tri-LIDAR Architecture. We got some pretty exciting publicity for the company and a whole bunch of other stuff. So can't wait to dive in. For those of you who are new, welcome. My name's Ben. I was MicroVision's global product manager for wearable displays between 2006 and 2011. And here I am 14 years later, still a big fan and advocate for the company and continuing on my quest to bring you the very best MicroVision information that I can. So thanks again for joining, and let's get to it. Okay, just because it's fun to do, here's a disclaimer. The views and opinions expressed are my own. I do not represent MicroVision Inc. or any of its affiliates. I'm giving you information at the best of my ability, but there's no guarantee that everything I give you is correct and accurate. And you should, of course, do your own research and consult a qualified advisor before making any investment decisions.
Welcome from Munich and welcome to IAA Mobility 2025. Let's go inside and have a look at the MicroVision booth. Come on. Here we see our Tri-LIDAR architecture consisting of our MAVIN long-range LiDAR and two of our MOVIA S short-range LiDARs integrated in the corner of the vehicle. And here we see our MOVIA S 180 degrees field of view LiDAR sensor integrated in the side of the vehicle. And here's the highlight of our booth. It's a live point cloud of our MOVIA S installed here in front of our booth, showing the surroundings in a 180 degree field of view. So if you want to find out more, come see us at Hall B2.
So you can get a sense for the energy there, awesome music, exciting presentation, and we're off to the races. So let's see what else came out of day one. All right, here's the first press that I found from day one at IAA Munich. It's from Scott Fosgaard, the owner of Scott Fosgaard Communications, who says LiDAR has always been too expensive for vehicles. Not anymore. Glenn DeVos, who later this month will take over as CEO of MicroVision, announced a first for the company and the industry today in Munich at IAA, a mass market LiDAR that will start at $200, 40% cheaper than any other LiDAR supplier. The industry has it backwards, Glenn said to media gathered at Germany's premier auto show. The premise is that costs will come down when volume goes up. The truth of the matter is that will never happen unless we get the cost down before we go to market. The first thing we have to do is bring the cost of the sensor system down so that it's affordable on the vehicle, and today it's not. You know, LiDAR sensors are still north of $500 a sensor, which is crazy. That's more than your infotainment system, more than your digital display and dashboard. These sensors, this next generation, which is scheduled for a 2028 launch, are targeted to be $200 or less in the corners, $300 for long range. That's this next generation. Our roadmap brings that further down, and that's how you go from being a premium option to mass adoption. All right, so coinciding with day one of the show, a new section in the MicroVision website was unveiled, microvision.com/IAA, including some product highlights. So let's take a look at this. MOVIA S for automotive.
Traditional LiDAR is too power hungry, too large, too expensive for mass deployment. MicroVision redefined LiDAR from the silicon up. Introducing MOVIA S. Smaller than ever, engineered for ultra-low power, designed with automotive cost structures in mind. MOVIA S is LiDAR that scales, enabling also a complete LiDAR solution, with MicroVision's perception software on board. Because cost and performance are no trade-offs, and at MicroVision, we understand both. LiDAR is essential for automotive autonomy, but cost and complexity have slowed it down. MicroVision set out to change that. Introducing the ultimate solution that simplifies it all, a Tri-LIDAR Architecture. Long and short-range LiDAR perfectly paired for efficient sensing and reduced system complexity. Unlocking dramatically enhanced near-field performance, enabling safer ADAS capabilities in everyday driving. All at radically lower cost, ultra-low power consumption, and maximum integration flexibility for any OEM platform. Smarter, simpler, seamless. LiDAR redefined for the road ahead.
Sweet. All right, the new website section includes a page for the newly designed MOVIA S. It seems to have gotten even smaller and more candy bar sized. Ultra compact housing, seamless integration into design critical components such as bumper and fender, pure solid state, no moving parts, selectable field of view from 60 to 180 degrees, low power consumption, optional onboard software, developed according to automotive grade standards. Here's the product data sheet. Interestingly, it comes in a couple of different configurations or layouts. It seems the horizontal one is a little bit smaller. Maybe that's because it's got the smaller field of view. I don't know. But you got basically two versions of the new product. Highly cost effective, so $200 a pop for these guys. Doesn't seem too bad. MAVIN gets a new form factor. It appears significantly more square and less long than the previous version. That may be due to the reduction in specification that affords the smaller package size. But essentially what they've done is reduce the resolution and field of view to fix it in order for the system to be reduced in cost to the lowest point possible. So very, very interesting approach here. The Tri-LIDAR approach is essentially 3 LiDARs that are as inexpensive as they could possibly be, teaming up to create one super LiDAR sensor system. Corporate coffee is bland and stale. It was roasted eons ago and left in a warehouse and then put on a shelf. It's been sitting there for weeks and months. It's not fresh. If you want delicious tasting coffee, it needs to be roasted to order. And that's why I created Laser Roasted. what does the industry press think about the Tri-LIDAR architecture? Well, let's take a look. Here's what Motor Trend had to say about MicroVision's new offer. This $200 tech might finally put driverless cars in our driveways. The three-legged perception stool, cameras, radar, and LiDAR has long been the gold standard for automated driving. The MOVIA S could deliver bronze pricing. And there's your MicroVision photo showing the Tri-LIDAR architecture. We all know those spinning LiDAR gizmos perched atop the Waymo driverless taxis are too expensive for civilian use by several orders of magnitude. Also, way too ugly. At the IAA Munich Auto Show, supplier MicroVision introduced its MOVIA S corner LiDAR sensor aimed at dropping the price point and UGG factor enough to bring widespread adoption. One bite at a time. That's how you eat an elephant, and it's the core tenet of this democratization effort. Reduce the workload of the long-range LiDAR unit by letting two smaller corner LiDAR units cover the edges of the field of view. MicroVision calls this Tri-LIDAR architecture, and it allows the long-range LiDAR to narrow its focus, increasing the resolution a bit and extending its useful range. MOVIA S corner LiDARs. These new units use 100% solid-state sequential flash technology. No moving mirrors, nothing to fail or suffer from onboard vibration, so they're robust. Their field of view is selectable between 60 and 180 degrees. This makes them great for a lot of industrial robotic uses, which will help the unit scale to mass volume. When used in Tri-LIDAR as a corner sensor, they cover 90 to 100 degrees. But that can be widened to 180 degrees for full side coverage in a 360-degree application. Small and simple. Another cost reduction element, the move away from trying to identify some or all objects within the silicon of the sensor device, and then sending that processed information to the central perception engine, towards having every sensor continuously send all its raw data over the high-speed network to the now more powerful central computer for a more complete object detection analysis, now that network communication speed and processing can. MOVIA S small size makes it easy to integrate discreetly into bumpers, headlamps, or trim. And then here's some photos. This is, I guess, the new MAVIN. So there's a little bit of a difference between how MAVIN is represented here versus on the website. So I'm not sure what's going on with that. Range. A more narrowly focused MicroVision MAVIN long-range LiDAR can now detect the 15% reflective object with 90% reliability at 720 feet, with the corner units reaching out 100 to 160 feet. And there's some MOVIA S application shots. Mix and match. Knowing every automaker has its favorite suppliers, the MicroVision software stack can be made to function with any other LiDAR supplier's long-range LiDAR and on most any chip maker's silicon. So this is a fascinating thing, mix and match. I had never conceived of that concept. So that's something that's worth a little more analysis there. Current $200 to $300 pricing to drop. The MOVIA S corner units are expected to start out at about $200 when they hit mass production in 2028, with the simplified MAVIN long-range device, sized mount inside the top center of the windshield, ringing in at $300, but MicroVision has a roadmap to bring that down in successive generations. So if you did not know, Motor Trend is a major automotive media brand that as of late 2024, early 2025, operates with over 6.7 million subscribers on its YouTube channel, features a website with 3.9 million monthly visitors, and has an average median age of 50.4 and a median household income of $100,000 for its total audience. This is mainstream automotive media. So this is not IEEE Spectrum, as great as that has been to be a part of. This is your average Joe going and seeing this. So this is pretty tremendous. If you are new to the MicroVision story because you read this article in Motor Trend, definitely leave a comment and let us know, and welcome aboard. Very happy to have you along for the ride. So that's for passenger cars, but what about trucks? Well, according to trucknews.com, MicroVision eyes 2029 rollout of LiDAR for trucks. MicroVision says its MOVIA S short-range LiDAR sensor and Tri-LIDAR Architecture could reach trucks as early as 2029, about 12 to 18 months after passenger vehicle production begins in 2028. MicroVision's Chief Technology Officer Glenn DeVos, who will soon step into the CEO role, believes the technology can improve advanced driver assistance systems, ADAS, enhance safety around trailers, and eventually support autonomous driving in freight operations. During an online briefing from IAA Mobility 2025 in Munich, Germany, DeVos said the same technology that enables affordable LiDAR for passenger cars will also help bring advanced safety and automation to trucks. He added that cost reduction is what unlocks volume adoption, and fleets will only see value if this technology is reliable, compact, and priced for scale. Implications for trucking. For trucks, near-field coverage could improve vulnerable road user detection in tight urban turns, cut blind spots around trailers, and boost safety in yard operations. All right, so that was day 1 of IAA Munich. Let's see what happens on day 2.
MOVIA S has been designed to be very cost effective. Its small form factor and the low power consumption make it very easy to integrate in all types of vehicle platforms.
I don't know about you, but all this talk about LiDAR sensors is making me hungry. Hungry for delicious jerky. So, a quick word of appreciation for all of you. I have accomplished getting into the YouTube Partner Program, which means I can now offer memberships and other cool stuff associated with YouTube. So, I've created 2 levels of membership. One is the level 1, where you can get, emojis and stickers and stuff. And the next one is a level 2 where you can get early access to the videos. So I'm going to try to get these out by 10 p.m. on Friday for the people at the level 2, and then usual 7 a.m. Eastern for the rest of the world. So if you can't wait for the morning and you want to see at 10 p.m., join at the level 2 and we'll be good to go. Oh yeah, and both tiers will get shout outs in the videos. So everybody who signs up to be a member will get my shout out and appreciation always in every episode I ever do. So thank you so much. It's Auto Week on MSN.com, everything that's hot at the 2025 IAA Mobility Munich show. Here it is, lighter LiDAR. MicroVision introduced a new low-cost compact LiDAR system. According to Glenn DeVos, the new CEO, traditional LiDAR has awkward packaging and is too power-hungry, too large, and too expensive for mass deployment. The company's approach is to forget one sensor doing it all and switching to both short and long-range sensors that are optimized for their tasks. This enables you to simplify the task of the long-range sensor, DeVos said. You're not asking it to cover a wide field of view. Our solution is smaller, lighter, and has lower power consumption, and it's 40 to 50% cheaper if you compare like to like. Instead of mounting it on the roof, you can put it behind the windshield or in the grill. And here are the guys wrapping up the show over some kind of cola, I guess.
Hey Yannick, how's it going?
Good.
How's IAA been for you this year?
IAA has been really great. So generally a very positive impression, positive discussions about our technology, an amazing booth and a good team here.
And what are your personal takeaways from this year's IAA?
Personally, I think my highlights were the fact that you cannot really replace the personal conversation or the personal interaction with people. As great as online meetings are, I think the personal touch to it is irreplaceable in a way, be it with customers, investors, potential partners, former colleagues, even competition. I think the personal conversations is really one of the highlights. And also the feedback that with our technology, we are definitely on the right path and get a lot of attention on it.
Can you tell us something about the next steps planned for post-IAA?
Yeah, post-IAA, we'll take our Tri-LIDAR architecture with our MAVIN long range and the MOVIA S near-field sensors, show it to the customer base, integrate it in the vehicle, and show it to the world outside of IAA.
That's great to hear.
I would really love to get one of those shirts that those guys are wearing. Those are the slickest. So I've worked up a spreadsheet that describes the automotive LiDAR market opportunity as it pertains to the Tri-LIDAR configuration. And I have to admit, I did a double take on the values to make sure that everything was calculating correctly, which I think it is. But I wanted to share it with you. What I take away from this is maybe an improved appreciation for why the company is targeting automotive LiDAR in the first place. And let's take a look. Okay, so I got this forecast for light vehicles sold from a site called Immerse.com. You can take your pick. There's a variety of different market forecasts for vehicle sales going out through 2030 that are readily available. I just picked basically the first one that I found. So if this one is more aggressive than others, I don't know. I haven't had a chance to spend too much time. But just taking these values, it goes from 95.5 million cars sold, this is globally, to 113 million by the end of the decade. So just putting some numbers out there about the penetration of level 3 cars, so cars that can drive themselves to a level 3 extent, suggesting that 3% of those cars in 2028 are sold with this capability, moving to 5%, moving to 10%. So even by the end of the decade, 9 out of every 10 cars sold will still be, regular cars that have ADAS with maybe emergency braking support or lane keep assist or whatever. And then 1 out of every 10 has, eyes off the road, read a book kind of thing that the MicroVision LiDAR sensor suite could enable. So that gives you a ramp from about 3.1 million level 3 cars sold in 2028 up to 11.3 million by 2030, if you use those penetration rate figures. So then the next question obviously is, well, what percentage of those will the MicroVision Tri-LIDAR sensor suite penetrate? And, we can put any figure we want for what we think they might be able to achieve. Last week, we looked at all the LiDAR CEOs and sort of compared them. And so you can put any kind of handicap you want on what you think these guys are going to be able to accomplish. For the sake of grounding this in some kind of reality, let's use 10%. So of the level 3 cars that are sold between 2028, 2029, and 2030, we're going to say that 1 out of 10 of those has the MicroVision Tri-LIDAR architecture that Glenn is promoting. Now, you might say it should be higher, and that could be a fair argument, and I think it's a worthwhile conversation. If you think it should be different, go ahead and say in the comments. But, we don't know. But let's just say 1 out of every 10 level 3 cars sold between 2028 and 2030 uses the MicroVision Tri-LIDAR, okay? And we got $700 pricing, with a roadmap to bring it down further. So we started at $700 for the first 2 years, brought it down to $600 for the third year. Okay, and then the values that you get with that is $218 million in Tri-LIDAR revenue for the first year, going to $380 million in Tri-LIDAR revenue in the second year, and going to 682 million in Tri-LIDAR revenue in the third year. Now, this is not necessarily anything but an indicative point to say that this is a big market opportunity. So that's why you see these companies being formed to go capture this. 10% of all vehicles being level 3, well, we can probably foresee that number is going to ramp. If it doesn't cost a ton to add this capability, why not put it on a Camry? Why not put it on a Civic? Who's going to want to buy a car that they have to sit and manipulate in bumper-to-bumper traffic when the buddy in the next house has a car that can drive himself and he's sitting there taking a nap or whatever, right? So we don't know what the figures are going to be. But you can say these are aggressive or conservative, but it's just something to put out there to respond to. So we know what the pricing is at $700. We have an idea of the forecast, a total volume of automotive sales from the various forecasts that you can find. So the only real variables are how many of these cars are going to be level 3. And then of those level 3 cars, how many use the MicroVision Tri-LIDAR architecture? Okay. Now, what's not known is what's the margin on the $700 that's captured as profit, but you figure there's going to be something. Now, you can take all this with a grain of salt, but I think the point is that, there's gold in them thar hills. And that's probably why Sumit reoriented the company towards automotive LiDAR. He probably had a spreadsheet just like this and said, our technology is perfectly suited for this. Let's go do this. And so then he bought IBEO, and now he's got the flash LiDAR, which enables the Tri-LIDAR architecture. And now he's passed the baton to Glenn, and Glenn says, you know what? Let's drive the cost out as aggressively as possible so that we can get to mass market. Now, is mass market 10% of 3%? No, it's bigger. But for the purposes of our conversation, let's ground it here and go with a ramp of 200 million to 680 million in 3 years from the launch. So that's something to think about. In other news, we see the advent of LiDAR integrators emerging that will resell LiDAR from LiDAR manufacturers into various verticals. Here's a company called US LiDAR that's seeking to sell solid-state LiDAR, such as the MOVIA L. So this is very interesting. We can see what appears to be a reseller strategy targeting the same industries that MicroVision is listing on their website. So you've got sort of the advent of a channel strategy, because the truth is, in MicroVision, they only have a couple hundred people working there, I think. And, these markets are so huge that they really need to develop a broad channel strategy beyond just inside sales in order to go and address them. So I was happy to see this US LiDAR. You can take a look at this, us-lidar.com. And if there is maybe a few dozen of these resellers out there pushing these units into various market segments, we could start to see a nice ramp. There's your automated forklifts, there's your agriculture, there's your mining. So if it's not in the Rolodex of the guys inside of MicroVision, maybe it's in the Rolodex of these guys at US LiDAR. All right, that's going to do it for this one. I got to go put food on my family, as George W. Bush once said. I appreciate you guys being with me for all this. Next week, I will get to SBMC and all the interesting news around that. But for today, we're going to leave it there. Thanks so much for being with me. Please do like, subscribe, add a comment, add a question. This is the lifeblood of the whole thing. So I'm very happy to try and address your questions or put stuff that you contribute into the program. If you just let me know what's on your mind. So happy to do that. Thanks again For everybody who's bought on Laser Roasted, we got some wonderful reviews coming in this week. People really love their coffee. And give the jerky a try as well, and I'm sure you're going to love it. All right, thanks again, and we'll see you next Saturday.